Hello everyone, welcome to Venkanna English Guru. Friends, we are talking about romantic period and about romantic period where we had introduction to romantic period in four classes, and from today onwards, and I'm planning to talk about some introductions to authors, important authors of the period. So, who are the important authors according to the Romantic period, and what writers and you need to focus on? So, your focus should be always on writers like Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, and John Keats, P.B. Shelley, Charles Lamb, Jane Austen, Sir Walter Scott. There are and who are the important writers as I spoke about previously. So I'm planning to give you from 6 to 8 important authors, and mainly when I talk about Wordsworth, I may take extra time, and about John Keats or about P.B. Shelley. So I may take the whole class for 30 to 45 minutes. And when we talk about short writers like Charles Lamb or Sir Walter Scott, where I can take, where I can club 2 or 3 authors together and I'll take the class. In this video, I'm going to talk about, give you broad introduction to William Wordsworth, the greatest poet of the Romantic period. And when you talk about a writer, and because this I spoke from in my previous videos also, you need to know some basic knowledge about the writer and complete awareness about the works and the style and themes and the critical comments that are made on the particular writer, and some of the some of the themes. So I don't think that it's a time for us, because since I'm giving you only introductions, I'm not talking about in deeper aspects, but I'm planning to give you an outline about some of the popular works of those important writers. With regard to Wordsworth, where I'll be talking about 3 important works, I'll be giving you some introductions to Ode on the Intermissions of Immortality and Ode Tintin and the Prelude. I'm planning to give you some basic knowledge, at least maximum 10 to 15 statements about the particular text. Okay, so that is what I'm planning to do in this video. See, romantic period, which is also called the age of Wordsworth, and 1770 to 1850, the wonderful person and who lived for 80 years. And Wordsworth, and he was born on 7th April 1770 and died on 23rd April and 1850. He was the major English romantic poet, very important. And one of the major important poets of romantic period is Wordsworth. And he impacted the concepts of romanticism, and who is also called the pantheist, the greatest pantheist, who believed that God exists in nature. Next, with S.T. Coleridge, helped to launch Romantic Age in English literature with their joint publication, Lyrical Ballads. I told you during my introductions to Romantic period. And the publication of Lyrical Ballads, which is considered to be the beginning of Romantic period, Romantic Age. Next, the second of 5 children of and his parents, John Wordsworth and Anne Cookson. So Anne Cookson and John Wordsworth, John and were the parents. We need to remember. And his sister, Dorothy Richardson. Dorothy Wordsworth, Dorothy Richardson, who becomes a part of a modern period. Dorothy, and he had a lot of impact of this Dorothy. Lectures and speeches to Dorothy also figure as a part of his works. And he was from Cockermouth and Cumberland Lake district. Hence he is called Lake School poet, and we had a discussion with regard to that. Some basic knowledge, basic information about the writer. Next, and his father, who was a lawyer. This is very important. Sometimes you will also get bits based on the author's father's profession. Okay, Matthew Arnold's father was a headmaster, and this was asked a couple of times. And D.H. Lawrence and Charles Dickens' father was a clerk. This was asked. couple of times and different examination. So lawyer died when William was just 13. So and his father passed away when he was just 13, and his mother died when he was 8. So look at a child who lost and his parents when he was below 13, and how terrible one's life is, but how he took up inspiration from the nature and how he became an ordinary man, a matured man in the world. We need to, that's not just Wordsworth, most of the greatest poets, greatest writers, like if once you talk about the modern period like T.S. Eliot, W.B. Yeats, Samuel Beckett, most of them became so popular and Nobel laureates, but their life is all about a lot of problems. A lot of problems, like how Wordsworth and he survived after and losing his two parents when he was below 13. Next, Wordsworth married his childhood friend Mary Hutchinson, okay, who later published his autobiography, The Prelude. Following the death of Robert Southey in 1843, and Wordsworth became the poet laureate and worked poet laureate from 1843 to 1850. This is very important. Wordsworth became poet laureate in 1843, worked during and 1843 to 50. After Wordsworth, Alfred Lord Tennyson. Before Wordsworth, Robert Southey. Remember these aspects for various examinations. He initially refused the honor, saying that he was too old, but accepted when the Prime Minister Robert Peel assured him that you shall have nothing required of you, which means as an official poet laureate, everybody has to write some official verses. But he was the only writer and he was the only poet laureate who did not write any official verses as the poet laureate. That is the greatness, because sometimes he will get bits based on and who was the only poet laureate worked for many years. Alfred Lord Tennyson. Shortest period, longest period, who is the present poet laureate, who was the poet laureate who did not write any official verses, who was the first official poet laureate, and unofficial poet laureate, who was the first poet laureate. Like that you will get bits, and be careful about that. Became the only laureate to write no official verses. That's what I've been talking about. He was the only poet laureate who did not write any official verses, and to praise the king, to praise the church, to praise the parliament. His great passion was for traveling. Not just Wordsworth, you and I, most of the students who study literature as the major subject, we feel like traveling a lot of places. A lot of places. We feel like traveling different places, lonely places where you can see a lot of nature places. So he also had that kind of passion for that. Perhaps he's not the lost leader. This is very important. And the lost leader, perhaps he's not the lost leader who and recantation Robert Browning bewails with rather theatrical woe, but he lived to deplore the Reform Bill, which is actually passed in 1832 and which was against the downtrodden communities and the poor people and the middle class people. And this Reform Bill and the Poor Law Act 1833 destroyed created classes. And because we will talk about something, the Industrial Revolution, the Victorian period, and the the Poor Law Act and the Reform Bill, how they classified people into poor people, middle class people, sophisticated people, and that created some kind of concern in Robert Browning. And according to Robert Browning, Wordsworth should have stopped this bill, but he could not do that. Hence, Robert Browning commented on Wordsworth saying, "You were the lost leader because you could not stop and the passing of the bill, the first Reform Bill in the Parliament, in the Victorian Parliament." Hence, he called him the lost leader. You are a very useless leader. Who called Wordsworth the lost leader? Robert Browning. For what? Because he was not able to oppose the Reform Bill in the Britain Parliament. Next, his sister, the poet and diarist Dorothy Wordsworth. Remember this, Dorothy. Along with Dorothy, and he published Lucy poems. Remember, Lucy. Lucy poems are associated with Wordsworth. This is very important for us. Lucy songs, Lucy lyrics, Lucy poems are associated with Wordsworth and Dorothy Wordsworth. Okay, so Dorothy Wordsworth, she was the sister diarist, and he was close all his life. Apart from St. Coleridge, and Wordsworth was very close to St. Coleridge. And most of the poems that were either addressed to St. Coleridge or Dorothy Wordsworth. Remember this. You may get a bit the following poem that is addressed to. If there is no St. Coleridge, the answer is going to be Dorothy Wordsworth. Wordsworth's father encouraged William in his reading works Milton, Shakespeare, and Spenser. So he had a lot of impact of Milton, Shakespeare, and Spenser. That is why Shakespeare and Spenser, Shakespeare and Spenser, they introduced different sonnets like English sonnet, which is also called Shakespearean sonnet, Spenser sonnet, and Wordsworth. And he took the models of composing sonnet and that were practiced by Milton. That is why Miltonic sonnet, which is actually practiced by and Wordsworthian sonnets. So Miltonic sonnet is nothing but Italian sonnet, a sonnet that is composed into two parts, ottava and sestet, which is practiced by Milton, which is called Miltonic sonnet. The same model which is followed by uh, Wordsworth, but the rhyme scheme was somewhat different. So the model is Italian, Petrarchan sonnet, Miltonic sonnet, Wordsworthian sonnet. Same. I think I also spoke about this in my discussions to sonnet and types. So remember. So you can have this idea, Wordsworthian sonnet or Miltonic sonnets are nothing but Italian sonnet or Petrarchan sonnet. Only the subtle difference is the rhyme scheme. What is the rhyme scheme of Italian sonnet? Abba, Abba, CDC, CDC. But here the rhyme scheme differs. That's it. But the model is same. Two parts, ottava and sestet. Same thing, ottava and sestet. Next, you can see a relationship with Anita Valen. Okay, the moment we are talking about literature is nothing but we are dealing with our lives. So without life there is no literature. Without literature there is no life at all. That is why Aristotle made a statement about criticism. Literature deals with life and criticism deals with literature. See what a peculiar statement that he makes. In the same way, literature deals with human life. Without human beings, without human life, there is no literature at all. So the moment you talk about literature, which means you talk about your friendship, you talk about your relationship, you talk about your happenings in a society, you talk about what you do, everyday activities. That's what Wordsworth did and composed. So relationship with Anita Valen, and he had a close relationship with this lady and beloved Anita Valen, and she was a French girl. See, and as I told you, Wordsworth had a lot of passion for traveling. In the process of traveling, where he met a lot of people, and he met this lady, and he fell in love with this lady. In November 1791, Wordsworth visited revolutionary France. What was happening in 1791? The French Revolution in 1789, and during the time he visited France to take inspiration to compose poetry, but he took inspiration from a French girl. France became enthralled with the Republican movement, influenced by that French Revolution. He fell in love with a French woman, French girl, Anita Valen, and they had a relationship, and as a result, they gave birth to a child, Caroline. This is very important. What is the name of the child born to Anita Valen and Wordsworth? Caroline. And he also composed a poem on this child and baby girl. Next, the year 1793 saw the first publication of poems by Wordsworth in the collection An Evening Walk, one poem, and descriptive sketches, and which were published in 1793. What is the first collection of poetry? An Evening Walk or descriptive sketches, published in the same year 1793. In 1795, he met Coleridge in Somerset and had a close friendship with him till 1827, till the death of S.T. Coleridge. So remember, friends, together Wordsworth and Coleridge, and with insights from Dorothy. See, the third person is always Dorothy. Dorothy, the sister of Wordsworth, Dorothy produced lyrical ballads, but there is no contribution from Dorothy, only the insights in terms of discussions. One of Wordsworth's most famous poems, Tintin Abbey, and Tintin Abbey, Ode on the Intimations of Immortality, and Tintin Abbey, and Anecdote for Fathers, We Are Seven, Simon Lee. There are plenty of poems that become a part of this. And the first poem, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and the last poem, Tintin Abbey. Remember this. Lyrical ballads begins with the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Lyrical ballads ends with Tintin Abbey. Very commonly asked bits in terms of JL or DL and different examinations in Indian context. Not just in India, I think. And some of the students who've been watching our videos from not just India and maybe certain part of Africa and Bangladesh and Pakistan, other countries. So that is why, and they're asking not to use these technical words, but our discussion is on net. That's what I've been using. Forget about. So lyrical ballads begins with Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.